his most eligible gentleman, but she did know she was going to resent the very sight of him. When he was watching her, it was difficult to sneak off without notice, which was a crucial element of her plan and instrumental to its success. She had so carefully planned every detail. When the darkness of grief had threatened like an angry thundercloud, she had researched. When she'd become discouraged by the lack of clues, she'd made lists. When her rational side insisted she was mad for pursuing vengeance, whispering that it could only bring ruin, she'd mapped out the finances she would need to be successful. She had planned every detail, but she hadn't planned on him. None of that mattered now, though. What mattered was not being discovered in this compromising position, and finding out exactly why he had intruded upon her hiding space. Why couldn't he be like the other dandies who frequented the balls and society affairs? Why did he have to be a constant distraction from her plan? So much so that she now stood hidden, literally between a wall and a hard place. She now had first-hand knowledge that he did not need the padding the other young bucks used to build up their frame. He was all muscle, a fact of which she was uncomfortably aware with his arms wrapped like steel bands around her. His black-as-night hair was overgrown, but she could tell it was not for fashion's sake. A lock of it fell over into his sharp green eyes, and she itched to push it back behind his ear. It was not just his looks that drew her, though. It was something more than that. Something she had not quite been able to put her finger on since she'd first seen him that night of Lord Dorchester's ball. A grunt followed a loud thud, bringing Gemma back to her current predicament. She imagined that the unseen pair had knocked the heavy crystal decanter she'd seen earlier onto the thick Persian rug. "Is that it?" An outraged female's voice sounded in a sharp staccato against the sudden silence. "Really, Reginald, I could have had a better go at it with my coachman. I cannot believe I wasted my time with this. You are no better than a rutting schoolboy." "But Sylvie—" "No." There was a rustle of skirts, then the muffled tread of footsteps. "We're through here." Gemma listened for the man to leave, but he was still uttering oaths about his departed partner. After what seemed like an eternity, but which was probably only a minute or two, the man collected himself enough to storm out of the library, a rush of noise from the ballroom tumbling into the room before growing dim again. Gemma waited a beat in the renewed hush, and then placed her hands on Lord Winchester and gave him her best shove. He didn't budge, just squinted down at her fingers, which were now resting on his chest, then back at her. Heat radiated into her fingertips, and she struggled not to blush again, having done so more in the past 10 minutes than in all of her life previously. But since he did seem to be remaining cautious rather than deliberately torturing her, she picked a spot above his shoulder and stared at it as his scent drifted over her. Sandalwood. "I believe they are gone for good," he said, finally stepping up from their hiding place. He glanced around as though confirming his statement before turning back to her. He clasped his hands behind his back and towered over her. He was trying to intimidate her, she was certain. Well, he clearly did not realize with whom he was dealing. "No," he said, the epitome of an arrogant, demanding lord. "Explain yourself." What? She'd been here first. If anyone had any explaining to do, it was he. After all, he'd disrupted her search of the library. "Excuse me," uttered the little creature in front of Lucas. She was the picture of disgruntlement, her eyes blazing and cheeks flushed. She all but stomped her foot on the ground. Lucas ignored the question, not quite sure what to make of the evening, only knowing that when he'd opened the door to the library and seen her there, part of him hadn't been surprised. He'd known Gemma Lancaster had secrets. A sudden thought struck him, however, and for a reason he could not quite name, it did not settle easily in his mind. "Should we be expecting other company?" he asked, watching her face in the semi-darkness. "Were you meeting someone here?" A tiny gasp escaped her rosy lips. If possible,